All right, welcome to the Two Sons podcast. Happy Sunday night, everybody. First
This
ever
is new for
edition
us.
recorded in the Hoops Tonight studio.
Yeah.
Paid for by the volume. We should throw them a little bit of a shout out there. Luke is just deep in a renovation right now.
Very deep.
Yes. But he's finished the floors.
Yes.
So progress.
Yep. Floors are torn up, and then we put concrete floors down, which we poured ourselves.
Yeah.
Baseboards are ripped out. New paint today. So we're
You
on
actually
the
painted
homes.
today?
Yeah.
Finished the whole house.
Most of the house.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I had Elena was working. I was working. My brother-in-law's fiance, my dad, Elena's dad. We're all
Not me. Bad friend over here, by the way.
Jason's deep in his season.
Yeah,
at this moment.
playing in a men's league game.
you were playing-
Other debaucherous behavior that was not related to helping my friend remodel his
Yeah,
house. So.
apparently we're best friends, but it's the first time I've ever been in the studio. I mean, it looks nice. No,
So, how many hours did you spend masking?
actually, no masking. We did not spray. We rolled.
You rolled the whole damn house.
Yeah, because we were all on top of each other, right? So because of that, we wanted everyone to be able to roll and to be able to like paint with brushes around trim
That makes
instead of just shutting everything down and spraying.
So baseboards.
Baseboards, yep, all the trim around the
That's
the
all
doors,
you have left, right?
and then finishing up paint.
Yeah. And there's always like a lot of touch-up shit that you're
There's gonna
gonna
be
have to do at the
so
end.
much touch up.
But
Dude.
he is. When is your first shift at the new job?
Monday,
Monday.
a week from now.
Literally. Okay, so he's got one more week to get all
Yeah.
that done.
Yeah.
I'd say Operation Luke remodels his house in 2 weeks has gone pretty well.
Dude, it's gone great.
Yeah, considering the disasters that have hit you along the way, it's been
Yes.
pretty good.
Yes.
His concrete guy was like, "Yeah, the tar paper stuff on the floor, you could just go ahead and leave that." And
Yeah,
then as
he
soon
said
as he started painting over, it just started bubbling up. And he's like, "Oh,
It was a huge problem. Dude, okay, this is how bad it was. Not to get on a tangent. I was literally hands and knees walking or crawling around my floor, tapping it to see where there was hollow spots where it had bubbled up and where I couldn't visually see it. And then I'd go with like a scraper and like scrape up the new layer of concrete that was there. And then we'd just go extra heavy on that layer. We did 4 layers of concrete.
I was really interested when you told me that the layers were only like a 16th of an inch.
Yeah,
thick.
incredibly
That was interesting
thin.
to me.
But when I was walking around it, you can't tell where there could be hollow spots. So hopefully it holds up. But
It'll be fine, man.
I'll tell you though, I'm excited to get back into the wood shop, and I'm excited to like get back into my wheelhouse.
Yeah, dude.
I'm ready to
where your
make-
expertise is.
Exactly.
Dude, I totally get that.
Exactly.
I totally get that. Also,
Yeah.
before we get started, special shout out to the wives.
Yes.
They granted us 20 minutes to come over here and record real quick. But yeah, so yeah, none of this happens without them, obviously. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos.
Please, I don't have a job, and and we need some money because I'm also remodeling my house.
Follow all of our social media profiles. I always put a link underneath the video. But yeah, so that's about it. We're gonna be doing episode 9 of Andor today.
A little
And
late.
then you've done 3 episodes of Tales
yeah,
of the Jedi?
I think it's been the first 3.
Okay, so
I
that's Ahsoka as a baby.
Ahsoka's a baby.
That's
her
Count-
mom is a champ.
Count Dooku taps into the dark side whilst
Yeah.
on a mission.
Mm-hmm.
And then
I saw Count Dooku full blown chatting with Palpatine.
Oh, you saw the whole episode. So you saw him kill Yaddle.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So
Maybe it's 4. I don't know.
cool.
Mm-hmm.
So let's actually start with that.
Okay, let's do it.
I have a feeling
Spoilers.
Judging from
hey,
the
spoilers.
viewership-
Watch out.
Yeah, spoilers. Yeah. Judging by our viewership, people seem to care about Andor less than other Star Wars
Yes, I
content.
know.
Ahsoka episode, not really much to talk about. She's cool.
She's a baby.
Yeah, she can connect with animals, which is a pretty
Yeah.
played out Jedi trope that you see quite a
Right.
bit. They have the ability to
Right.
connect with animals. Just another example of how like Force users are identified when they're babies, stuff like that.
Exactly.
I
And the
thought
elder lady identifies her as Jedi. She's like, she is Jedi.
Yeah, she is Jedi. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the last 2 episodes that you have not seen yet are both related to Ahsoka, and they're really good, but you haven't seen those yet, so we won't get into them. But the Dooku stuff I think is really interesting. 'Cause
Right.
essentially what they took with
cool.
this is it's basically like a little like cartoon movie split
Right.
out over 3 episodes that covers essentially 2 Jedi missions
Yep.
and then what happens after Qui-Gon Jinn's death, and
Right.
all of it is
Yeah.
Essentially like the tale of how Dooku turns to the dark side. And what I appreciated the most about it is it's totally like he's a good guy. Like,
Right.
he's a good guy who had some issues with the way the Jedi Order was operating.
It's super believable.
And you can see kind of his step-by-step process
Right.
to reaching the conclusion that he reached.
Which is the inefficiencies of the Jedi.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. The rules that they play by definitely makes them inefficient compared to the dark side, which is what they can do whatever they want. Right. But yeah, that was like super cool because, you know, in the past we knew Count Dooku as being a good guy at one point. He was a Jedi master. That's all we really knew. And then all of a sudden we get to see the inner workings of the missions that he would go on, where he'd want the little guy to be successful, or not successful, but he'd want people of the universe just to be able to live their lives. And he understood that the Republic wasn't allowing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like they kind of like, especially with the Mace Windu episode, dove in specifically to like the difference between what the company line is from the Jedi.
Yeah.
And your ability to actually get stuff done.
Right.
And in Dooku's defense, like, even though there were some casualties involved, he got to the bottom of it. You know, so the first one with Dooku, that's not really super eventful. First of all, I love this concept because when I was a kid and I would read expanded universe novels, we did some stuff with like, the Yuuzhan Vong and all that. There are deeper storylines, and those are obviously great. We've done some of that with Thrawn and with the High Republic. But specifically a lot, you'd see these like novels that would be like Anakin and Obi-Wan go on a mission.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn go on a mission.
Right.
You know, like all this, and it was just like, and there'd be a whole book that would just be this mission where they'd run into all these issues and they'd solve some problems, and then that'd be the end, and it'd be like, you know, Anakin growing as a young Padawan or Obi-Wan growing as a young Padawan. And it was really cool because like that is to me like the day-to-day operations of a Jedi. And so much of what you see in Star Wars is more just like the defining moments of the entire dynasty of the Jedi, right?
Especially in the movies.
As opposed to the day-to-day stuff. And like, so I love diving into that. And so essentially Qui-Gon Jinn and Dooku go on a mission to rescue a senator's son.
Yeah.
Right. And you get to see Dooku tap into the dark side. And then the second one, it's very similar. Mace Windu and Dooku go on a mission to investigate the death of a Jedi.
Right.
And in the process, Mace Windu is just like, oh, we're just going to report back to the council, and Dooku's like, no, I want to find out who killed my friend. Like, this was my friend. We need to find out who killed her.
It's cool.
Right? Yeah. And like everything he does is completely believable. All he does is basically just be really forthright.
Right.
Like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. There's no blast marks on your ship. Right. There's blast marks on all these trees. What did you guys do?
And then he allowed them just to fall into their own trap.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, Dooku's a really interesting character, and I'm liking him more than I ever thought I ever could. Because he's always been an important character for the universe, but seeing his backstory is everything. And you and I have talked about it, but at the end of those episodes, whose name pops up on screen? Dave. Yep. Dave Filoni.
Dave Filoni, man.
Dave Filoni, in my opinion, needs to be in charge of everything that is Star Wars. Everything that gets onto a screen that's related to Star Wars, I think, should be passed through Dave Filoni.
He should be in Kathleen Kennedy's position.
Yes.
Unquestionably.
100%. And granted, there's so much that you and I don't know about Kathleen Kennedy's position.
Yeah, and maybe her position is more business oriented.
I'm sure it is. It's all, I'm sure it's more numbers than anything else.
But he should be her lead advisor.
He should be her lead advisor. And who knows? I'm sure there's people who know the inner workings of Star Wars way more than we do. And I'm sure it's a completely different rodeo than what we think. Mm-hmm. But he has such a good grasp of the Star Wars universe, and he understands so well how important every single scene is that is put out to viewers.
Well, those missions, for instance, like he understands, like it might come off as boring. Like if I was like, oh, this episode's going to be Dooku and Qui-Gon Jinn going on a mission to rescue a senator's son. Like, you could imagine the Kathleen Kennedy types and the J.J. Abrams types is sitting in the conference room like, that sounds boring.
Where's the big explosion? Where's the 50,000 Death Destroyer or Star Destroyers with huge guns?
Can they run into 25 Sith? Like,
no, seriously, dude. It's just like he has such a good understanding for what is Star Wars, and he has such a good understanding for what the scale of Star Wars is,
Yes.
right? So like what's intriguing about that episode is literally a baby taming an animal. And that was like incredible to me. I don't need to see 50,000 Star Destroyers with huge guns strapped underneath them. I want to see a baby Jedi like calm a saber-toothed tiger. Like that is so cool. That is
Very
so
cool.
intrinsic in Star Wars. That is so intrinsic in what a Jedi is. And that's what he gets. Like he doesn't have to make some ridiculous scale in order to make Star Wars nerds like you and I be interested.
Yep, I 100% agree. So it ends in Sidious meeting. Well, essentially Dooku refuses to go to Qui-Gon's funeral, in large part because there's a scene at the beginning of that particular episode where Qui-Gon essentially it's clearly set in the middle of the Phantom Menace because Qui-Gon is there on the Coruscant and they're getting and he's telling everybody, hey, I found a Sith, which as you can imagine would be huge news. Like the entire Jedi Temple would basically be buzzing with that information, right? And so essentially what ends up happening is Qui-Gon, Dooku asks him about it. Dooku, like, 100% believes him. Like, he's like, oh, like, this is happening. We need to take care of this. This is a huge deal. And Yaddle is there, and she's kind of like, no, we're handling it with caution.
Right.
This is what we're supposed to do. And you can tell Dooku immediately is like, no, this is a terrible idea. You're sending him out there with Obi-Wan and literally just a couple of Naboo people to go, solve this entire problem by themselves. This is insane. And so you can tell he's almost like a conscientious objector to the funeral.
Right.
Because he's like, he died because we failed him.
Right.
Like we failed him
by
not sending all of our power to this situation,
Right. Which was their greatest threat. At that point, that was the Jedi's greatest threat that they knew about.
Of course.
They talked about it, like, right? They're like, yeah, it could be a big deal.
Yeah, although one of my biggest pet peeves is the in the Phantom Menace when they're like, always two there are, but which was destroyed, the Master or the Apprentice. It's like the whole point of them going down to 2 was that you guys didn't know about it. Like, somebody screwed up there. But Lucas pitched like it was like a 9-inning shutout with like 4 hits. This is one of those 4 hits. You know what I mean? Like it's not you didn't throw a perfect game, but you don't complain about Verlander throwing 9 innings, shutout innings. That's kind of the way I
hear you. It's kind of cool not to get too far into this either though, but Yaddle, like we've always
was dope.
like Yoda has another alien that is of his species, which is Yaddle that we know about, and now Grogu. But it was cool to get into a little bit of Yaddle lore as well.
Yeah, and because she doesn't appear in Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
Or in Attack of the Clones. So like,
and again, that's Dave Filoni knowing his stuff, right?
Like, oh, she's not there. We can jam her in here somewhere.
Here's how good these cartoons are too. Number 1, they're cartoons, and number 2, I turn them on, and Elena and I are eating dinner, watching them, and she's like, "Okay, fine, we'll watch one." And then the next one comes on. Okay, fine. We'll watch another one. And before we know it, we're 3 or 4 episodes deep, and Elena's like completely intrigued.
Dude, they're so good. I was thinking the same thing. I need to get Carly to watch them. I binged all 6 episodes like one day. Or I watched the first 2, and then I binged the last 4 in one day.
And at first I was like, oh my gosh, these episodes are so short. No, they're exactly what they need to be.
They're exactly what they need to be because essentially like it's episode cycles too. Like the Dooku episodes, it's kind of like a 3-part story. It's kind of It almost like takes on the vibe of like a play where it's like this is Act 1, this is Act 2, this is the finale act, like that kind of thing. So when Yaddle obviously follows Dooku to go visit Sidious, and when Dooku interacts with Sidious, it kind of had this vibe, and I wonder if you picked up on this, and it reminded me of when Anakin's conversations with Sidious in the council or in the Chancellor's chambers,
right? Like the hallway leading into it.
Yeah, where like Sidious really comes down to the level of his apprentices when he's trying to sway them.
Yep.
And he almost talks like, hey, dude, like our backs are against the wall here. Like if this works out, everything's going to be great. Like you just got to do your job. I'll do my job. Like everything's going to be, it's not like you can tell he's so deeply manipulative that like, I think he says something to Dooku, like, we still have a chance. Like if he's very like,
he creates like a time, he puts like a time bomb on it. Like we need to do this thing like right now.
Yeah. You could tell he has convinced Dooku that aligning with the Sith literally will help him accomplish his goals, Dooku's goals of like a better galaxy, essentially.
And that's the pitch. That is the pitch. Is Palpatine is promising a better galaxy. He promises a better galaxy in his own sense to Anakin when he gets him to sway, right? Which is your wife gets to live, right? That's a better galaxy for Anakin. And Anakin's obviously frustrated in the Republic and how inefficient they are, which we were just talking about.
And that's the whole dynamic is like you could tell, and it comes back to the subterfuge that is literally what defines the Sith after Darth Bane is like everything they do is like Palpatine sees a disgruntled Jedi.
Yeah.
One that has a little bit of a tendency to tap into the dark side of the Force. When he's
just a casual choke.
Yeah, just a little casual. Yeah, just
a casual force.
Choking a senator or whatever. You know? And essentially, like the idea there is like he kind of like picks at their weakness. Like, oh, he's frustrated with this. Okay, I'm going to kind of hammer this point home or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yaddle though, like, and you know, there's some we're going to talk about this here in just a second when we talk about Andor, but you know, there's kind of like this idea of everything hanging by a thread in the Star Wars universe. And you get that a lot from everything about the rebellion through to the finish. Like everything hangs on the thread. Like
the margins of victory are almost zero.
Tiny. Yeah. Even something as silly as like, oh, what if Mon Mothma failed to paper over a $400,000 charge?
Right.
She would have been caught, you know, or like, oh, this is how close this is how close Dooku came to accidentally revealing Sidious because Yaddle tracked him to this area of Coruscant that's industrial, and like oh, Yaddle, if she would have just ran away,
I know Elena brought that up. Yeah, she's like, why doesn't she just go? Yeah,
but there's a lot of stuff. It's no different than like in Lord of the Rings when like Isildur's got the ring and he's holding it over the fire, and Elrond is like, cast it into the fire, and he's like, no, and he holds it. It's like this close to literally
just ending
everything.
Yeah.
By the way, we have a new puppy on the set.
This is Dallas. He's a good boy.
This is my puppy. So Lola is Luke and Elena's puppy. This is one of my Australian Shepherds. I have a female as well, but we said guys only for this podcast. For this pod. Yeah. He's a very sweet boy.
Yep.
But yeah, so anyway, like any other thoughts on the Yaddle?
No, I'm loving it. I'm excited to see the last couple episodes because I know that there's some big stuff that happens just because, you know, scrolling through social media, I've seen, you know, I've seen some spoilers at the very least, but I'm gonna act like I don't know about them just so I can.
You're gonna really appreciate it. You're gonna really appreciate it. It adds weight to the end of Clone Wars.
So, and here's why I haven't watched Andor until tonight, and here's why I haven't watched the last two episodes is because literally I don't have a TV that's working that has Disney Plus attached to it.
His life is in shambles.
Just because of the remodel. So I would have watched it by now.
So there are three things that I want to hit from Andor in the prison. Or excuse me, the latest episode of Andor. So there's the Cyril storyline, the Andor Cassian in the prison storyline, and then there's the Mon Mothma storyline. And we got to start with Andor. So what I thought was really cool is we know we're trending towards a prison break episode.
Right.
That's coming. And I thought it was going to be this week. And one of the things that I appreciated, and this really is what kind of defines Andor as a series, is like we are going to painstakingly explain the stakes to you. And essentially, like, it would have been so easy just to have a prison break episode this week. But instead, now when it comes next week, there's this feeling like if they don't escape, they will die.
They're going to be stuck there forever.
Or die.
Yeah.
And so, like, literally the doctor at one point says, like, within 2 weeks, you'll be wishing you were this guy.
Right.
And so, essentially what's happening here is in that moment, and like, we literally just watched the episode with our wives not even 20 minutes ago, and I had seen that episode once before, and that moment at the end where Andy Serkis, who by the way was the guy who played Snoke, for those of you guys who don't know,
fun little
shout out Ryan, the producer
fun fact
of Hoops Tonight, was like telling me about that the day of. But so Andy Serkis also did Snoke. And at that moment where earlier in the episode, Cassian's asking him how many guards are in each level, and he just refuses to even consider speaking out about it.
Because he's so scared.
Because he's so terrified. And then he just is like 12, never more than 12. Because like he understands now like that, like, oh, we have to escape.
Well, not only that, he's been a human being in there, and he's noticed that. Those are thoughts that all of those people have thought about. How many guards are there? What would I have to do to get out of here?
Well, you can tell, like Cassian clearly already has a little clique of guys who are totally on board with what he wants to do.
Right.
But Andy Serkis is very much like, dude, I got 217 shifts left.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want miss me with this escape stuff. Like, I'm just trying to get out of here.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the old fashioned way.
Right.
But essentially, it seems to me, from what I can gather, and maybe you interpreted it differently, but it seems to me that the gist of it is, they're like, oh, your shifts are done. Let's pull you out. And
Right.
then they're just putting you in another bay.
And then that's one thing I didn't really get. So if you speak up and say, yeah, I was discharged, but I'm right back here, is that the problem that happened on level 2? Because they're acting like something.
Word got out on the floor.
Yeah.
And clearly they were all pissed off about it.
Yeah.
And then everyone got killed.
They just killed everyone.
Which is insane.
I know.
But like, and this is the first thing that I thought, and I'm curious to hear your opinion. We already know that the Empire was willing to enslave the entire race of Wookiees to build things,
That
many
is a good
things,
point.
including, if I'm not mistaken, from our readings of Thrawn, I'm pretty sure they implied that the Wookiee slaves were helping build the Death Star.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100% they were. Because the Thrawn came across that shuttle that had like the modified bunks.
Yes,
That
exactly.
were specifically for Wookiees that were on the trajectory towards what he thought
towards
was
Stardust.
yeah.
And so, essentially, like, the idea that this is a prison work camp, but like they have no moral boundary,
Dude,
to stop themselves from doing something like essentially enslaving them.
Right. Every week I talk about Nazis, and I'm trying not to. Because like I don't want people to like think that this is a show about like I don't know Nazis. But holy crap, dude! I literally think that the producers of the show were like, "Hey, how many notes can we take from like Nazi prison camps and put it into this show?"
Mm-hmm.
Like you see like the Empire logo just like out and about at Coruscant, which was like super reminiscent of like banners that you'd see during that era, and then like the creepy doctor. Dr. Gosh, or what was his name?
Gorsh,
Gorsh,
or something like
dude.
that. Well, dude, it's like there's a certain fear that comes from. I mean, this whole Nazi thing has been completely on the at the public forefront lately with all this Kyrie Irving stuff. And and like it's so. I was literally thinking about this the other day. Like, how insane is it that a country in Europe, like a developed country, became so propagandized by essentially a tyrant that he forced his citizens to read books and watch things when they were young that taught them to hate Jews, and in the process murdered over 6 million people.
Dude, that's insane. And not only that was not that long ago.
That was not that long ago. And what's crazy about it is like when I was thinking about that the other day, I'm like, I was like, what it must have been like to be in the world at that time and to know that was happening.
Terrible.
Like, there were probably a lot of Americans who were like, hell yeah, I'll go to war for that.
Yeah.
You know, like
You're
that
right.
kind of thing. And like,
right.
And essentially like what I think is cool about this specific line that they're drawing here in Star Wars is they're tapping into that kind of fear.
Yes.
Like essentially explaining essentially they're trying to show that this particular imperial society was oppressive in a way that went beyond just, oh, there was a Sith Lord, or, oh, we have a bunch of Star Destroyers and we'll kill you if you do stuff. It was like intellectual, like we are going to snuff out any hope that you have of surviving this mess.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And the way that they do it is absolutely bizarre. It is out of a sci-fi horror film where it's just like, yeah, you can have as much food as you want. We want you healthy so you can work harder for us. It's like, yeah, no, you're not going to live in filth. You're going to be super clean. You know, you're going to have a bunk to sleep in every single night. The floors are going to be pristine, which can also kill you, by the way. It's just like, it's absolutely bizarre how like manicured that prison is. It's like, it's weird to think of a prison that manicured and that clean, right? That white.
It's very
it's
imperial
like
austerity.
It is. Yeah. But yet there's just so much fear, and it's so clean cut, right? It's almost surgical.
Yes,
right.
It's surgical oppression,
and that's exactly what that creepy doctor is too. It's like it's almost surgical how he can put on a headset onto a human being and drive them insane from the screams of dying alien children just to get information from you. Like it's on a whole nother level.
Yeah, and it's it's one of those things too. Like, can you imagine if sometime in our lifetime a president got elected that somehow managed to take ultimate power, and in the process announced a law And in the law, he was like, hey, we need to instill more law and order. So everyone that's in prison right now, your sentence is doubled. Oh, by the way, that like public disorder charge that used to give you a 6-month sentence,
Right.
it's now a 6-year sentence. Like, can you imagine like what that would do to a society? Like,
Right.
it really is like, and that's what I appreciate about this show is it adds weight to the existing Star Wars storyline by adding fear, adding detail, adding essentially all of these like elements of evil that make it seem like it's worth it.
It adds a ton of weight. So and that's it's funny you bring that up. So one of Dave Filoni's power moves is he can add weight into his episodes. So do you remember 99, the clone 99? He was he had like all of his like he was kind of like malformed, and you ended up loving him because of it. Like he had this awesome attitude. He was like super helpful. Like, some of the other clones liked him. Some of the other clones were like would bully him and stuff. Like that's the equivalent of the guy who had the stroke.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So like you end up like feeling for him, like, dude, you're so close to getting out. And then all of a sudden he has a stroke and gets literally euthanized in a hallway in this prison. It's like this show is crazy. I like how Star Wars is making this like way more gritty than it's ever been before. Mm-hmm. It's really cool to see.
I've enjoyed it too.
Yeah.
So Mon Mothma, we learned that her cousin is Vel.
Yeah.
Which it was interesting on a bunch of levels. I did think it was interesting that Mon Mothma at one point says like, you need to lay low for a while.
Right. Just like, be the rich girl.
Yeah. Just do that for a little while to like kind of like get people off your tracks. And then the husband is clearly like trying to turn the daughter against the mom. Talking about her like ex-boyfriend, even though literally it was like her elementary school friend. And then it looks like essentially that this money that was loaned to her by this banker from Chandrila needs to be accounted for because the ISB will eventually search her books.
Right.
And we don't have to dive too far into it because I think this is going to be a storyline in the next episode. But apparently she's going to have to go into business with a skeevy person. And what I appreciate about this is like, because we're about to learn this in general with, I say we're about to learn. We already learned this with Rogue One with everything she's dealing with right now with Saw Gerrera and stuff. But essentially, like, Mon Mothma clearly went into this thinking that she could do this while keeping her hands clean. And essentially what this storyline represents to me is just the harsh reality of the fact that waging war against the Imperial machine would require her to get her hands dirty a little bit.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Her and it's so cool to see her character develop because she's always been and we talked about this last week, so I'm not going to jump into it too far, but it's really cool to see essentially one of the queens of the rebellion, right? So you think of two people when you think of queens in Star Wars, and it's Leia and it's her.
Yep. She becomes the Chancellor of the New Republic after the Galactic Civil War.
And it's just so cool to see her kind of put herself into this situation. And when we've seen her in the past, she's always been so stoic. She's always been at like some battle table, giving orders, like listening to her advisors. But it was really interesting to see her have true fear of, oh crap, what did I just get myself into? And seeing that side of Mon Mothma, where she wasn't just the stoic queen that we know her as, and seeing her as a human being where she's thinking to herself, I just bought in 100%.
Well, what did she say to Vel? She's like, I'm starting to think we might be in over our heads.
Yeah.
She says something like about feeling it closing in around her.
Right.
But that's kind of what I'm talking about, like hanging by a thread.
Right.
Because she is the one who, ordered Rogue Squadron to get the plans for the Death Star from with the help of the Bothans, and sitting there saying like that the Empire has made a critical error and the time for our attack has come. Like she's so integral to everything that they accomplish,
right?
And we're literally watching like her first steps in that direction, which is it's so cool. I've enjoyed this very much.
Yeah, and so what's cool about it is, from what I understand too, and I should know this, but from what I understand, the same producers are making Andor as they did Rogue One. And obviously Rogue One was an extremely well put together film that understood its boundaries and understood the weight that it had in relation to all the other Star Wars movies. And it's obvious that they're going about Andor in this way too, which is really cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the last part of this episode was Cyril and his mom. They had a conversation. Cyril talks about how he's promoted. I was joking with you and our wives on the couch earlier. I was like, one of my favorite parts of this show has been Cyril's weird conversations with his mom, because he's so like dead, and he's quick and witty, and like he's so like deadpan and like in his retorts to her, and like she just kind of like, whenever he gives her the little bit of like deadpan crap, like she just kind of plays it off by being mom still, like
right.
They neither of them is like willing to give an inch to the other, you know what I mean? Which is so funny. But so then he stalks our what's her name? Deidre. He stalks Deidre at the ISB headquarters, and that goes south for him quickly. And you know what's
he is so weird.
But they're going through this storyline with intent. So like, eventually, I mean, this is my theory. Eventually, he's got to be the one who makes the breakthrough.
I don't think they'd be developing
Deidre's trust at some point.
And I don't think they wouldn't be developing him this much if they were just going to have him be a creep. Mm-hmm. Right. So I agree. I agree with you.
But yeah, so like she basically says at one point, she drops a big threat on him. She's like, if I even like see you again, you will be in a cage on the outer rim. Like, and she has like a moment where she gets to her office too, and she takes off her hat. You can tell she's just like, what is going on?
Who is
dude,
this guy?
Man?
Yeah. And he's so weird. And he gives me the creeps. He totally gives me the creeps.
I'm also loving the ISB conference room scenes with the dude so that dude plays Qyburn, who's basically the hand of the queen to Cersei in Game of Thrones. And he just plays like this kind of like, he's clearly evil, but he's also like not inherently unlikable, you know?
Yeah.
And he has that same kind of vibe in Game of Thrones, and I've enjoyed it. And I'm hoping we'll see a little bit more Wolf Yularen too at some point.
So I'm glad you brought him up. So in the past, we've talked about how the portrayal of certain areas of Star Wars kind of misses the mark. So for example, like in the books, we know Thrawn as to be essentially a good guy. Like, right, he's part of the Empire, but he's a good guy in my book. But then in Rebels, the TV show, he's really not. Like, it is obvious that he's bad, right?
Of course,
dude. That's the same with Wolf Yularen. Right, like in all of Clone Wars, he did, but he was super likable. Like all the missions that he and Anakin Skywalker had together, like you were rooting for Wolf Yularen, right? And then all of a sudden he like shows up and he's in the ISB room, and he's all of a sudden just this kind of hard nosed.
He's kind of cutthroat, and I get it, but I look at it as him kind of doing his job, and I kind of feel the same. Like, I am really curious in the long run how Thrawn plays out in live action and how Wolf Yularen plays out in live action, because I do think that they'll touch into their likability a little bit more.
I hope so. I really hope they hit on that. What's interesting about the ISB agents too is how many of them are like our age.
Oh, they're all very
Isn't
young.
it super weird? Like, what do you think their angle is? Like they're like young overachievers trying to make themselves.
Oh, I think it's simple, and you run into this a little bit with the First Order too. Which is a whole other thing with that stupid, what was it called? Aftermath. The Aftermath trilogy that I read, which was basically tried to explain the origins of the First Order. But basically, my take on it is all the old people, with the exception of the established Republic employees, were like kind of at their wits' end and kind of sick of the Empire.
Yeah.
But if you were like a 17, 18-year-old in the galaxy, and it was like, wait, I could get a good job.
Right.
And I could get all this money, and I could be on spaceships, and I could be going around the galaxy, and it's like, and all I have to do is like serve the Emperor.
Kick-ass
it's like
suits.
Yeah, like
and cool hats.
Yeah, dude.
Hey, if you
play
interrogate
dead children
this,
screaming noises to
I know.
people? Hell yeah,
if
dude.
you interrogate this person and ruin their lives, we will give you 15,000 space bones. We will give you a bonus of 15,000 space bones that you can take home to your little apartment on Coruscant.
It's so funny.
I know it's really interesting that like all of them are like mid 20s to mid 30s. It looks like
it was specifically mentioned in the Aftermath trilogy that when they went out into the unknown regions to rebuild, they took children, and it was because it was very important to them to be able to basically indoctrinate them. And I've kind of look at it as like kind of like a grown up version of that. Like it's like I think that the life of the Empire was most appealing to a young adult who was making a career choice in a scary world where the Empire was in control. Like,
True.
It was kind of like a beat 'em or join 'em kind of
Yep,
thing.
you can't beat him, join him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have anything else from this episode?
No, man, that was it.
All right, guys, that is all we have. As always, I sincerely appreciate your guys' support. We will be back sooner, I would hope, for this next one. Everything's just been crazy with Luke with the remodel, but with his new job, he's working 3 days a week. So we're going to have lots of time to do this on shorter notice with this kind of stuff. But yeah, so thank you guys as always, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot.